to be cognizant of time, we're going to get started. So thank you guys for attending our parent workshop. I know that some folks may be on Zoom as well. I wanted to put up, we have some faculty here at UT who are working on some early childhood research. And so they have approached Dr. Hampton, Lauren Hampton. She's got a research project looking at developmental monitoring for toddlers, basically of siblings of individuals with autism, right? So you already know you have one student, one kid, and it's sort of like you have a younger child perhaps that you might want to be watching. So it's kind of like a screening, kind of that kind of thing. So infant, toddler, sibling of a child with autism may be eligible for this developmental monitoring research study. So there's this flyer, we can also send it out. And then she also mentioned that the email address, if you want to just email instead of going through this info, is sibwatch@utexas.edu. So that's SIBWATCH@utexas.edu. So she's basically just recruiting to look for some participants who want to work with them. She mentioned there was a lot of goodies. I think you get like $100 and toys and an iPad that they're used for telehealth purposes and stuff like that. It's just like, I've got all this stuff. I just need recruit. I just need people. So I just want to put that out there, especially with our families. And recording. Okay. Double checking everything. All righty. So yes, we are. This always throws me off that it puts me on full screen. Okay. So we're really lucky to have Dr. McConkey kind of asking for us to do a workshop. That he actually wanted to do this workshop, really wanting to connect with families, and so it's a real nice thing for him to offer that. And so we've kind of heard from him throughout the day, some words of wisdom. We'd like to hear what you have for our parents, and then we also have again. It translated. So Christian, thank you for doing that for us. And so yeah, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you very much. Over this side, maybe.
Right here. So you can move this. Okay.
Well, good evening, people.
Buenas tardes a todos.
We're very grateful to you for joining us.
Estamos muy contentos de que estén aquí con nosotros.
And I'd like to thank Christian for being my voice in this particular instance, for those of you who are using Spanish.
El doctor McConkey dice que está agradecido conmigo de traducir para ustedes.
And for those of you who are using English, this is your chance to have an improved Spanish lesson.
Y para todos aquellos que hablan inglés, esta es una oportunidad para que practiquen su español.
I want to talk a little about the power that parents have when it comes to helping their children, every child in their family, but especially if the child has a disability.
Quiero hablar con todos ustedes del poder que tienen los padres y las madres de familia con sus niños, especialmente para los que tienen algún niño con alguna discapacidad.
Because there are things that parents can do that professionals can't do.
Porque hay cosas que los padres y madres de familia pueden hacer que los profesionales no.
And over the years, we have learned from the research that has been done into children's development some very important truths about families.
A través de los años y de estudios que se han realizado, hemos descubierto que hay cosas sobre el desarrollo de los niños.
I want to talk about 3 particular truths that are important for all families all over the world.
Quiero hablar sobre 3 verdades importantes que se han estudiado sobre los niños a través del mundo.
We know that children grow best in families. If you take a child from the family and put them in an institution, then they don't do as well as though when they live with families.
Sabemos que los niños crecen mejor en familia, Por ejemplo, si un niño se aleja de su familia o lo alejan de su familia, habría dificultades.
So if a child can no longer live with their biological parents, then we try to find foster or adoptive parents for them.
Si un niño no tiene la oportunidad de crecer con sus padres biológicos, buscamos la oportunidad de ponerlo en adopción o con padres temporales que se quieran hacer cargo.
The second important thing about families is they are very important influences on their child's development, more so than formal education or health or social services. The family influence is the most important.
La segunda verdad es que la familia es la influencia más importante en el desarrollo del niño.
But the other truth about families is that it is hard bringing up children, so families need support.
La segunda verdad es que es difícil para los padres educar a los niños y es por ello que los padres necesitan apoyo.
Sometimes families are a bit reluctant to ask for support because society thinks they should be able to bring up children without any support.
Algunas veces los papás están temerosos de solicitar ayuda. Could you repeat this one?
Yeah, so that society often expects families to be able to bring up children without having any support.
Porque algunas veces la sociedad espera que los padres no necesitan ayuda.
But there are also truths about professionals, people who are employed to support families, that we have to also recognize.
Pero también hay verdades que los profesionales también reconocen.
First of all, professionals have very limited time to see children. Teachers might have more than most, but therapists often only have very short times with the children.
Una de las verdades sobre los profesionales es que cuentan con tiempo limitado para atender a los niños. Los maestros puede que tengan un mayor tiempo que los terapistas. Sin embargo, los terapistas solo cuentan con algunas horas.
And the therapists often have a particular role to do with the child. They focus on one little bit of the child's development and not maybe the whole child.
Debido al tiempo, el terapista tiene un rol que cumplir con el niño, una función específica.
And very often they don't have enough time, particularly for children who need extra help.
A veces los profesionales no tienen suficiente tiempo para dedicarse al niño, quienes podrían necesitar más ayuda.
So those two truths are the setting for why we're here tonight, because each complements the other.
Estas verdades son el foco de atención de esta reunión porque se relacionan entre sí.
Because families provide opportunities that professionals cannot do.
Las familias proveen oportunidades que los profesionales no pueden.
Families are present with the child 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're there during the day often, they're there at night time, so they're much more involved in the children's life.
Las familias están presentes con los niños 24 horas del día, 7 días a la semana. Ellos están con ellos en la mañana, en la tarde, en la noche, y los profesionales no.
And families have the opportunity to include the child within the family, introducing them to the grandparents, to aunts and uncles, to brothers and sisters and cousins. Professionals can't develop those relationships the way families can.
Las familias tienen la oportunidad de envolver a los niños con el resto de la familia, con tíos, con primos. Sin embargo, los profesionales no pueden hacer eso.
And families can introduce children to the community, getting them involved in activities where they can meet other children, take part in sports, arts events, religious events, things that, again, professionals don't do.
Las familias también tienen la oportunidad de incluir a los niños con otros niños y envolverlos en actividades tales como religión, actividades artísticas, recreativas, juegos.
But maybe even more important is the type of care that families provide children with.
Lo más importante es el tipo de cuidados que las familias proveen a los niños, que los profesionales no.
And this has been called nurturing care, which is unique to what families are able to do. And there really hasn't been any professional who's been able to do it to the way parents can do.
A esto se le llama cuidado cariñoso. Could you repeat the second part, please?
That professionals haven't been able to provide the way parents provide the nurturing care for their children.
Los profesionales no han sido capaces de proveer este tipo de cuidado cariñoso. Sin embargo, los papás pueden.
So what is this nurturing care that families are doing? Well, research says there are 5 main domains, 5 areas where parents really have an advantage in terms of helping the child's development.
La ventaja que los padres de familia tienen con respecto al cuidado cariñoso son 5, de acuerdo a estudios que se han realizado, y son los siguientes.
Firstly, they're very important people in making sure the child is healthy.
Primero, es que ellos se aseguran de que el niño esté saludable.
If they do become sick, they know when it's so serious that they have to take the child for medical attention.
Si el niño se enferma, los papás se aseguran de que el niño reciba atención médica.
And even when they're well, they make sure that they maintain their health, that they're able to keep healthy.
Y cuando los niños, aunque estén sanos, los padres se aseguran de que ellos continúen con esa salud.
So it's important, therefore, that people are with children 24/7 because their health can go up and down.
Es importante que los papás estén con los niños 24 horas del día, 7 días a la semana, porque su salud puede estar a veces bien y a veces no tan bien.
And professionals only tend to get involved when there is a problem.
Los profesionales tienden solamente a envolverse, a hacerse cargo de ese asunto cuando se les pide.
Second important thing is giving the child a nutritious diet.
El segundo aspecto importante es brindarles a los niños una alimentación nutritiva.
Something that professionals can easily take for granted because their lifestyle is often means that they can afford good quality food, and then they assume that other people can also have the resources to provide nutritious food.
En muchas de las ocasiones, los profesionales dan por hecho que esa nutrición se está llevando a cabo. Okay, could you please repeat the second part?
Yeah, that professionals don't often have they have the resources so that they're able to provide nutritious food, and they assume that families can do the same.
La razón es que los profesionales en muchas ocasiones tienen los recursos para contar con ese tipo de alimentación, y es por ello que ellos asumen que los padres de familia cuentan con los mismos recursos.
And yet families will often sacrifice their own food to make sure that the child does have nutritious diet.
Los padres de familia están dispuestos a sacrificar su propia alimentación con tal de que sus hijos tengan la mejor alimentación.
The third aspect that families provide is giving the child safety and security.
El tercer aspecto es que los papás les brindan a los niños seguridad y cuidado.
This might be particularly true if a child has a condition like autism, where they can be anxious in their unfamiliar situations.
Si un niño tiene una condición como autismo,
And the child might be in unfamiliar situations and be very anxious.
el niño puede estar en situaciones no familiares y sentirse ansioso.
So families often provide a safe and secure environment in a way that professionals would struggle to do.
Las familias se aseguran de que los niños estén en ese ambiente seguro para el niño, y los profesionales no pueden hacerlo.
Another area that families excel in is helping the child's early learning, skills such as learning to become mobile, learning to communicate, and learning to get on with other people.
Y la tercera área, could you please break it
Yeah.
down?
So that the families can help children to learn to become mobile,
Las,
to communicate.
las familias pueden enseñarle al niño a que se mueva, a que se comunique
and to socialize with other people.
y a socializar con otras personas.
All of those skills need to be learned on the basis of 24/7. You need lots of practice to develop those skills.
Todas esas habilidades se aprenden en un ambiente de 24 horas al día, 7 días a la semana, porque esas habilidades requieren de práctica.
And if children have difficulties with those skills, if you've got a disability or an impairment, then it's really critical that families are involved helping them acquire these early learning skills.
Si los niños tienen dificultad para aprender esas habilidades y más aún cuando tienen alguna discapacidad, es muy importante que los papás de familia estén ahí para apoyarlos.
And one of the things that's really critical from the way in which families manage to do a good job is what's called responsive caregiving.
Una de las cosas en que los padres apoyan se llama cuidado receptivo.
So I want to look in more detail at those two aspects of early learning and responsive caregiving.
Vamos a analizar de estos dos aspectos que son los más importantes, que se llama enseñanza temprana y cuidado receptivo.
So in terms of early learning, one of the things that families can help all children with is making available books, playthings, so that the child is cognitively stimulated.
Una de las cosas que se puede hacer para estimular el aprendizaje temprano es que los padres les faciliten a los niños libros, juguetes, para que así desarrollen sus habilidades cognitivas.
And giving the child opportunities to explore new things
Y darles a los niños oportunidades para que exploren cosas nuevas,
often outside of the family, taking them to opportunities in the local community, like play parks, cinema, other things that really will stimulate the child's thinking.
seguido fuera de la familia, con otras personas fuera de la comunidad o llevarlos como al cine.
And the third important thing is finding some sort of quality preschool provision that their child can go to so that they can learn by being with other children.
El tercer punto es encontrar un preescolar de calidad para que el niño así pueda seguirse desarrollando.
Those three aspects have been shown to be important to all children's development, not just those with disabilities, but they're probably even more important when the child has a disability.
Estos tres aspectos han resultado ser efectivos para todos los niños, pero especialmente para aquellos niños con alguna discapacidad.
And when it comes to responsive caregiving, some of the important things there are giving the child love and affection.
Cuando viene cuidado receptivo,
And also responding to them in their interactions
responder en sus interacciones
and encouraging the child to become engaged in their routines.
y motivar a los niños a que se envuelvan en sus rutinas.
So often the learning that children acquire in a home context is done in the context of everyday activities that go on in the family. The family, they use everyday activities that happen in the family to help involve the child.
Las actividades que ocurren en casa ayudan al niño a que se envuelva en dichas actividades.
And that has been, in some ways, a very important way in which parents can complement the specialist therapy that the child might be receiving by doing it, repeating those activities in the context of their everyday routines.
De alguna manera, estas actividades se complementan con lo que el profesional les está diciendo. Los padres pueden continuar con esas actividades y trabajando con sus niños.
So those are things we know families are good at doing, and we want to encourage them to continue doing those.
Nosotros sabemos que las familias son capaces de hacer eso y queremos seguirlos motivando para que continúen con esa labor.
But families can't be left to themselves. They do need help. They need the support of an environment that enables them to take part in all those learning experiences at home.
Sin embargo, las familias no se pueden quedar solas, por eso necesitan apoyo.
But it's up to families to ask for help, because people won't necessarily come and offer it to them.
Es necesario que las familias soliciten esa ayuda porque raramente la gente va a ir a decirles, oye, ¿te ayudo?
And here's some of the things we've learned about what support families require.
Estas son algunas de las cosas que aprendimos que las familias podrían requerir.
They sometimes need help in identifying what the needs of their child are and what the needs of the family are.
En identificar cuál es lo que el niño necesita y qué es lo que la familia necesita también.
And often that means having some form of personal plan for meeting those particular needs.
Eso quiere decir que seguido se necesita de un plan personal para determinar cuáles son esas necesidades y el procedimiento.
And if the child has particular difficulties with their development, that plan will start to include ideas for how they could be helped to overcome their problems.
Si el niño tiene necesidades en particular, ese plan personalizado es precisamente para eso.
It can help if families have the opportunity to hear from other people ideas or observe them doing things with their child that they can then copy.
Esto ayuda si las familias
Listen and copy what the professional is doing with their child.
Ok, esto ayuda si las familias observan lo que el profesional está haciendo con el niño y después ponerlo en práctica ellos mismos.
And an example sometimes is making a video recording, the professional working with the child or the parent working with the child, so that they can watch and learn from what they see happening on the video from each other.
Bueno, es una estrategia para esto, es si se graba, o sea, si se filma lo que el profesional está haciendo con el niño y lo que los padres están haciendo con el niño. Así, ambas partes pueden observar los videos y retroalimentarse el uno al otro.
Another thing that parents the world over have found helpful is the opportunity to come for training courses.
Otra cosa que los padres de familia pueden encontrar como apoyo es atender capacitaciones.
Very often these are held in their own locality.
Muchas de las veces este tipo de capacitaciones se presentan en sus mismas localidades.
But they can also happen, as we're doing, through Zoom, where families can meet and learn together.
Aunque algunas veces también este tipo de capacitaciones se pueden llevar a cabo a través de Zoom, como ahora, y aprender los unos a los otros.
And an advantage of training courses that are done with groups of parents is that they meet other parents and learn from each other.
Las ventajas de este tipo de capacitaciones, donde muchos padres de familia participan, es que todos pueden aprender de todos.
So what we're saying is that very often families need to be working together with others to really maximize the opportunities for their child to learn and to develop.
Lo que estamos diciendo es que es importante que las familias trabajen las unas con las otras en equipo. Así, las oportunidades que les estaríamos brindando a los niños se maximizarían.
And this idea of working together is really a powerful way of ensuring that children's needs and families' needs can be met.
La idea de que las familias trabajen juntas,
that the
second part.
needs of families can be met through working together.
Así las necesidades de las familias trabajando juntas se pueden, I'm thinking about the word in Spanish. Las familias trabajando juntas pueden lograr lo que se necesite.
And a definition of togetherness that I particularly like is this one. It's the pleasant feeling of being united with other people in friendship and understanding.
Una de los aspectos que me gusta sobre la unión, sobre este tipo de unión, es que la sensación agradable de estar unido con otras personas en amistad y comprensión.
So it's the parents and professionals working together in a spirit of friendship and in trying to arrive at a mutual understanding of what is important for that child and family.
El espíritu aquí es que los papás están trabajando juntos
That they're working together in a spirit of friendship and understanding of each other's position and roles.
La esencia es que están trabajando juntos con una esencia mutua de buscar lo que es mejor para el niño en un ambiente amistoso.
And that sort of partnership, togetherness, needs to involve not just the family, also the specialists, and also the community.
Este compañerismo necesita trabajar en equipo, en conjunto con la familia, la comunidad y los especialistas.
Because on their own, no one person, no one group is able to meet the needs of the child and the family.
Si esto no se lleva a cabo, es decir, si cada grupo trabajara independientemente, las necesidades que se quieren lograr simplemente no existirían, no habría logros.
So the lesson that we learned from observing all over the world in different countries is taking the work with the child and including it in a much broader context.
Lo que aprendimos observando en diferentes partes del mundo es, the second part.
And bringing them all together into a partnership and togetherness.
Que juntando estos tres equipos, estos tres grupos juntos en compañerismo.
And what we have learned from doing that, I leave you with the words of a famous American, Henry Ford.
Y todo esto dicho, los voy a dejar con esta frase de Henry Ford.
And he said, if everyone is moving forward together, then success will take care of itself.
Y él dijo, si todos se están moviendo hacia adelante juntos,
And
el
success will happen.
éxito se da por sí mismo.
And that's the evidence of much of what we're doing now in terms of helping families.
Y esto es la evidencia de todo lo que estamos haciendo para ayudar a las familias.
Of course, it's not always easy.
Por supuesto, no siempre es fácil.
There can be many ups and downs,
Puede haber muchos obstáculos,
but doing things together gives us all a better opportunity to experience success.
pero si trabajamos todos juntos nos da una oportunidad para experimentar un éxito aún mayor.
And to get us where we want to be.
Y juntos es como queremos estar.
And that is children with autism, disabilities, and families having a better quality of life.
Y eso es niños con autismo y sus familias para tener una mejor calidad de vida.
Well, I'm telling you all that in the hope that it triggers in your mind some comments or questions that you would like to make, either to those of you here or those of you who are joining us through Zoom. Please use the chat function, and Laura's going to tell me if there are any questions or comments.
Y después de haber escuchado todo esto, lo que quiero es que ustedes piensen si tienen alguna pregunta, algo que quisieran comentar y decir. y también para ustedes.
I have one question in particular about the synergy in terms of working best for the child. With the goal planning and there being limited research in terms of there's not a set system or a structure or even an outline that would fit from one person with autism to the next. How would you encourage families to establish realistic goals, but also goals that challenge their child and help them reach, you know, their best selves and the improvement that they're looking for?
So the question, and let's translate, and the question is around how do you identify which goals are appropriate for the child that the family and professionals can work together on?
La pregunta que uno de los miembros de aquí del público hizo es que en términos realistas, ¿cuáles serían las metas que se establecen para la familia apoyar a los niños?
I think you have to start by listening to the family in terms of what their expectations are for their child.
Lo primero que se tiene que hacer es que el profesional escuche a la familia.
And when you hear what they're saying, then maybe help them see that there are different steps to be followed in order to achieve that end goal.
Y cuando el profesional escucha a la familia, ambos se van a dar cuenta de los pasos que hay que seguir para establecer una meta o metas.
They may want their son or daughter to be able to speak in sentences, and they would like that to happen tomorrow, please.
Esto es en cuestión en cuáles son las expectativas que los padres tendrían con respecto a su hijo o hija. Por ejemplo, los padres, una de las metas que los padres querrían es que su hijo o hija pueda complementar oraciones para mañana.
But you may have to remind them that they once were a child who couldn't speak.
Pero el profesional tiene que recordarle a los padres de familia que ellos también fueron niños hace algún tiempo.
And how many years it took before they were able to speak in sentences.
Y cuántos años les tomó para que ellos fueran capaces de establecer oraciones completas.
And maybe ask them to recall the different steps they went through, the babbling, the one word stage, putting two words and so on.
Y tal vez recordarles todos los pasos del proceso que los llevó a poder formular oraciones completas, como cuando los niños solamente hacían ruidos con sus labios, y etcétera, etcétera.
And this is where your professional judgment starts to come in, because you can then help the parents see at what point their child is currently at and what would be the reasonable next step.
Y así el profesional puede pensar de una manera razonable a lo que llevaría al siguiente paso. El profesional y también los padres se darían cuenta.
So I've used that example just to show how the stages can be, in a sense, problem solved together.
Esto fue solamente para un ejemplo para demostrar cómo los diferentes pasos del proceso se vienen a juntar.
But then it sometimes is that families want the children to stop doing things.
Pero algunas veces los padres de familia quieren que los niños dejen de hacer ciertas cosas.
And this also is a challenge.
Y esto también es un desafío.
Because often it can't stop just like that, like a click of a finger.
Porque a veces esto no pasa tan rápido como cuando se truenan los dedos.
So if the child is being physically aggressive to other children in the family or to the parents,
puede que el niño esté siendo físicamente agresivo contra otros niños o los mismos padres de familia.
or if they're waking up in the middle of the night and don't quickly go back to sleep and they're causing all sorts of ructions around the house.
Puede también que los niños despierten a medianoche haciendo todo tipo de ruidos y I can think a word in English for that. Y tal vez descontrolando la familia.
We're making you work very hard. I'm sorry.
My brain is like,
But again, they feel helpless because they've lived with this and they don't know what to do about it.
who feel helpless?
The parents, yeah.
Algunas veces los papás se desalientan y sienten que no pueden ayudar al niño ni a ellos mismos.
So again, we need to remind them that change won't come suddenly, but it can be done in a series of steps.
Y nuevamente podemos recordarles que los cambios no pasan de la noche a la mañana, sino que llevan todo un proceso.
And this is again where your professional skills come in terms of you analyzing the functions of what the behavior is serving.
Y es aquí cuando la función profesional entra a trabajar.
What is triggering the behavior and what functions that the behavior is serving for the child, why they're doing it, trying to understand why they're doing what they're doing.
Aquí es cuando la función del profesional entra en juego para determinar qué es lo que está ocasionando ese comportamiento en el niño.
So that's where your behavior analysis approach becomes really important and significant.
Y aquí el análisis de comportamiento pasa a ser muy importante y significativo.
But there needs to be negotiation between what you might propose as a professional and what would be realistic for the family to do. You have to compromise between what you would want the family to do and yet what would be realistic, what would be practical for them to do.
Okay. Aquí es cuestión de un compromiso en lo que se quiere lograr y lo que realmente se puede lograr.
But whether it's helping the child learn things or helping the child stopping things, the important thing, I think, is to give the parents plenty of praise for the efforts they start to make when it comes to changing the child.
Lo más importante aquí es reconocer la labor que los padres de familia están haciendo, ya sea para cambiar cosas que los niños, cosas que no son aceptables para los niños. Would you say, like, for example, waking up in the middle of the night?
But when the parent starts to try to change things by changing what the parent is doing, praising the parents for being brave enough to try the new thing.
Okay. Sí, el profesional aquí realmente es esencial que reconozca el trabajo duro que están haciendo los papás para apoyar al niño, ya sea para cambiar un comportamiento o para avanzar en alguna meta.
It's a long answer to a very good question.
Una respuesta larga para una pregunta pequeña.
And for the parents in the room, how would you encourage parents to create those types of goals for their child?
Otra pregunta que una de las personas aquí en el público acaba de hacer es que cómo
For the parents, how do they create those goals for their child?
para los papás, cómo crean esas metas para el niño.
There will be parents who can do it for themselves, but you're thinking of parents who have been struggling and finding it difficult, I think.
Hay padres que lo harían por ellos mismos, sin embargo, tal vez aquí la persona que acaba de preguntar se esté refiriendo a papás que tienen problemas para crear esas metas.
So you could ask the parents, has this problem happened with other children in the family? And if so, what did you do for those children, the children without a disability or without autism?
El profesional podría empezar preguntándole a los papás de familia que si algún otro de sus hijos ha presentado este tipo de problemas con sus otros niños que no tengan alguna discapacidad.
Have you had advice from any other people in the family about what to do? Like, have you asked the child's grandmother what she would do, for example?
Otra cosa que el profesional procedería a preguntar es que si el padre de familia ha buscado consejos con otros miembros de la familia, por ejemplo, con los abuelos. ¿Y qué hacías tú cuando alguno de tus hijos presentaba este tipo de situaciones?
We don't want to give parents, we don't want to impose on them our solution. We want them to start to think through how they could create their solutions and how, in fact, they might already have done that.
Como profesionales no queremos imponer en los padres de familia nuestra manera de actuar en cómo lo haríamos. Queremos saber si los padres de familia ya lo han hecho a su manera y si han consultado a otros familiares.
So we have to keep building their belief that change is possible, moving away from a helpless feeling to empowering them that we can do something about it.
Tenemos que construir
We have to empower them to feeling that they can do something about it, not to be hopeless.
tenemos que enviarles el mensaje de que los papás pueden hacer algo por ellos mismos y reconocerles que ellos también tienen conocimiento.
Because we want them to be able to do that, not just for this particular point in the child's life where there's an issue or a problem, but we want to build them the capacity to face newer problems down the road and to have a transferable strategy that will help them carry on.
Queremos construir esos pilares y una estrategia a lo largo del camino que les servirá y los ayudará a todos.
So that means building this relationship where you're nurturing their capacity while providing your professional input to guide their thinking and what's important for them to consider.
Esto quiere decir que se tiene que crear una relación en la que a los padres se les reconozca sus conocimientos para que de alguna manera el profesional solamente sea un guía.
But it's always a challenge because every family presents you with a different take on what might seem to be the same issue, but their own personal circumstances can be quite different.
Sin embargo, esto siempre es un desafío porque aunque parezca que hay similitudes de familia a familia, cada familia es individual y cada familia tiene sus propias variaciones y diferencias.
And when I use the term responsive caregiving to the child, actually it's the professional who needs to have responsive caregiving to the parent in order to do that.
Cuando hablo acerca de cuidado receptivo,
That the parent requires responsive caregiving from professionals.
el papá y mamá requieren de cuidado responsivo de parte de los profesionales.
And very often that means that we have to let go of old ways of working in which we prescribe what families should do to ones that we attune what we're recommending to their particular care needs at that moment in time.
Muy seguido nosotros los profesionales, so you guys as professionals,
We have to let go of prescribing, telling parents what to do.
tienen que dejar de prescribir lo que los padres tienen que hacer
And listen carefully to where they are at and what their needs are.
y escuchar cuidadosamente cuáles son esas necesidades individuales.
Probably sounds better in Spanish than it does in English. I hope he hasn't left the room in disgust.
He needed a drink.
He's got so emotional, has he?
Exactly.
Yeah, he's gonna keep asking.
Yeah, he has got more questions. So we have a question in the chat though. Someone in the chat was asking how could they as a parent go about creating or establishing that community you were talking about?
That was it. How do you get to this parent-to-parent situation?
Could I go see the question written?
How would I go about creating or establishing a community?
¿Cómo yo como padre de familia
How would I
Second
go
part.
about creating or establishing a community?
Podría crear o establecer una comunidad.
What you're aiming to do is create a social network.
Lo que quieres hacer es crear una red social
And of course, two people can form that network to begin with.
y por supuesto 2 personas pueden crear esa red social para empezar.
And one of the roles that professionals can play is putting one parent in touch with another parent.
Una de las reglas que los profesionales, de las cosas que los profesionales pueden hacer es poner a un padre de familia en contacto con otro padre de familia.
Of course, this is with the parents' permission that they want to be in contact.
Por supuesto, esto es con el permiso de los papás afirmando que quieren estar en contacto con otras familias.
We're not into the business of forced marriages.
No estamos dentro del negocio donde queremos forzar matrimonios,
But when one parent says, you know, I really would like to meet another mother or father who's in a similar position as me, you can go over mentally, well, are there people that I know who we could put in touch because they live in your area? Are there other characteristics in common?
cuando un padre de familia de verdad quiere conocer a alguien más, a otro padre de familia que esté pasando por la misma situación. When a parent wants to meet another parent.
Yes, then you can put them as permission to pass contact details to each other.
Entonces el profesional puede facilitarles la comunicación entre esos padres de familia que quieren conocer a otros padres de familia.
Sometimes professionals would have organized a social event where families could be invited to come with their partners, mothers, fathers, and also other children if they want to, but it's more organized as a social gathering.
Incluso algunas veces los profesionales pueden organizar eventos donde padres de familia se reúnan, platican y también podrían traer a sus niños.
So it could be for a barbecue,
Puede ser por una carne asada,
meeting at a sports activity,
en alguna actividad de
meet and chat with each other.
algo que les dé la oportunidad a los papás para conversar.
Now, of course, a parent can take on that similar role, and maybe with the professional support, they would be the ones who would volunteer to help organize it. A parent
Like a
would
parent
help.
could be-
Yeah.
Otra de las alternativas es que también un padre de familia o padres de familia puedan organizar este evento with the professional or
Well, the professional
having
can
the
help there
initiative.
also to help with the invitations, who to invite.
Si el padre de familia puede tener la iniciativa y el profesional puede colaborar con ello también.
And the third way it has happened in my experience is when you organize some form of training event or educational event for parents, the opportunities exist then for parents to learn from each other.
Otra manera es que los profesionales pueden organizar eventos de capacitación y es otra manera de que padres de familia puedan conocerse and chat to each
And
other
chat to each other.
y platicar entre sí.
And that, again, parents can keep in touch with each other in between those group meetings.
Y así los papás pueden continuar contactándose el uno al otro a partir de esos eventos.
But you have to work out what's best in your particular situation. It may be that those are not necessarily culturally appropriate.
Cada quien, I'm sorry.
That what we've mentioned may not be totally culturally appropriate, that families don't expect to meet each other.
Aunque esto tiene que ser a un nivel cultural,
Or they haven't got the resources to come to meetings, no transport, don't have the money necessarily.
puede ser que algunas de las ocasiones los padres no cuenten con los recursos necesarios para atender este tipo de eventos y es por ello que cada cada situación es individual.
So you need to give some thought as to what would be appropriate given the needs and the characteristics of the parents you're working with.
Así que el profesional tiene que reflexionar y pensar cuál sería lo más apropiado para realizar este tipo de conexiones de acuerdo a las características de cada familia.
And in some of the sessions earlier today, we heard that some Latino families might be more comfortable meeting with other Latino parents rather than with parents from a white American or a Black American.
En las conferencias anteriores de esta mañana aprendimos que en algunas ocasiones, por ejemplo, las familias latinas les gusta más convivir con otras familias latinas que con familias blancas o afroestadounidenses.
And I think that's perfectly acceptable because that's how social networks often are created.
Y esto es perfectamente aceptable porque es así como las redes sociales se crean.
Is there any like online resource for parents to like meet other parents? Because like I've not had luck in the past, like the professionals that at least that we've had, I've not really had any luck with them meeting up with other parents, and
Sure.
and especially since COVID, even for drop off, like you drop off at your car, like you don't even have that morning to see a few other parents. So like, how else?
Online communities.
Unless we get permission.
I've seen too, like the school districts that sometimes on like social media, they have like the school district special education group or something like that. So that's, I mean, I've seen that on there.
Yeah, we're just in like a center at this time, but yeah.
So the comment has been, is there opportunities for people to meet online or through media?
Yeah, without, because
It's difficult.
My professionals don't have like
Where's the hands
a
for
way, like,
autistic parents?
I know, I need like a Tinder for
It's
autism
just- I'm
parents.
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Swipe
Just a
left,
joke.
this family looks good.
But sure, people end up marrying each other that they've met online.
Should I translate?
Could you try and get some of this in?
Una de las participantes acaba de preguntar que si hay recursos en línea para conectar familias con niños que tengan autismo.
But somebody has to make the connection, because leaving it just to one person to try to connect into this big
Right.
ether. But that is why we're coming back to saying the specialists have that, professionals have that potential to make those connections, either in real life, face to face, or through electronic. So the role of the professional in helping to connect people is also an important one.
El trabajo de los profesionales para conectar a la gente a través de redes sociales en línea también es muy importante. And I would like to translate what she said.
Go ahead.
Excuse me. What you mentioned about about resources of a school district.
School district.
I think that's important.
So on social media, I've seen it where there's groups called, it's like the school district, and then it's like special education, and there are groups and different parents who are in there.
Yeah. Otra de las participantes aquí está comentando que ella ha visto recursos en línea donde hay padres de educación especial y de esa manera pueden contactarse el uno al otro. Do you have any link? I feel like that's very important. That's why I'm
I've just
asking.
seen it like on Facebook, like it's been a little bit, but like for example, maybe like Houston Independent School District Special Education. If you come on my phone.
Well, thank you for that suggestion. Yeah. Tina?
Sí.
Some districts will have a parent liaison.
Oh,
So you can look
Okay.
into that. So for example, like I'm in Round Rock and to send this out, I contacted the parent liaison, so they might have some, at least,
okay.
they'll know, or again, networking.
Yeah, just if you just
Yeah,
meet
so
a couple, like, and get there, I'm like, how do I meet those first couple? The first few people.
So do you guys think that going going to the office of the school, parents can
Yeah.
be given information about it?
They typically do have like a lot of information on different groups they connect with. At least
The parent liaison person.
Adolescents,
Okay.
for adolescents though, like if you're just going to a center, it's, I think that's
You're like
really challenging.
a 5-year-old and you're not in it, or not even going to a school, like
Yeah,
an actual.
they have a,
Are you on Austin?
Yeah.
There's a Austin Special Needs Facebook group that is for parents specifically, and they like, because someone sent me a link from it once, and it's like,
Thank you.
if you are a practitioner, you can't join this group. Like, it is for
Yeah.
parents.
So give it to parents.
It's just the Austin Special Needs group on Facebook.
Ok, bueno, aquí estamos comentando que en Facebook hay un grupo especial para padres de familia con niños que tengan alguna discapacidad y se llama
Austin Special Needs.
Austin Special Needs.
And again, you can see how important language is in making these connections
Right, of
happen.
course.
And Latino families and some other more marginalized families will maybe struggle to make those connections. So again, that's another challenge that we have to face.
Otro desafío que tenemos que enfrentar es el idioma. Y como en este ejemplo se puede ver, hay veces que estamos limitados.
Well, our time is up, folks, but is there any one last comment? Anyone, any more on the chat, Laura, that's there?
I have
Well,
one question. Is there somewhere we could find more information? You were earlier talking about a group of parents that started their own, I don't remember exactly what it was.
it was in a country called Iraq.
Funded it,
Oh,
and then other parents came along. Is there anywhere where we could find some information for that?
Well, autismspeaks.org is working internationally in trying to develop various training opportunities for families. And they're also now looking to find more systems change that would help. So it's autismspeaks.org.
Hay una página de internet donde pueden encontrar información y recursos y se llama, is it possible to put it on to write it down
On the chat
on the
function.
chat, please?
Yeah, you can't see the chat.
If people are online, they'll see it.
Sí, hay una página de internet y ahorita mismo la estamos escribiendo en el chat.
Also, if you want a more local one, the Autism Society here is more like Austin.
There's like Austin Autism Society.
Yeah.
Austin, yeah.
And they do a lot of great work also and have a lot of good parent resources and parents on the board.
Sí, hay dos organizaciones. Una es internacional y la otra es más local, de aquí de Austin. Y I think we're gonna write them down, Paul. Y ya las acabamos de escribir en el chat.
Well, folks, thank you very much for your participation
Muchas gracias a todos por su participación
and for your interest and enthusiasm for this important topic.
y por su interés y entusiasmo en este tema tan importante.
And I certainly wish you well in all your endeavors to work in a spirit of togetherness.
Les deseo mucho éxito en el espíritu de trabajemos juntos, de unidad.
And maybe we've given you an example tonight of what togetherness does mean.
Y tal vez les demos algún ejemplo de lo que unidad significa.
And that we can embrace within that spirit 2 different cultures, 2 different languages.
Y así podemos darnos cuenta de cómo se relacionan 2 culturas y 2 idiomas.
And I think the person that's worked hardest tonight has been Christian.
Él dijo que él cree que yo soy la quien ha trabajado más.
So you
Sí,
might
se ha
want to
esforzado más.
show your appreciation in the usual way. Well done.
Thank you.
Safe home, everyone. Have a very good weekend.
Dr. Roy.